Hey, what's good, Jazz fans? Welcome to Jabber Jazz, where we give you ad-free Utah Jazz content from a fan's perspective and an analytical emphasis. Basketball talk for you in your podcatcher and on YouTube. And today we're doing a season preview, and I have an awesome guest with me here today. He's the site manager for SLC Dunk. You know it, you read it, you love it. And also the curator of Hoops Nerd YouTube channel content on the Jazz and on the NBA at large. And also a pixel art aficionado. It's James Hansen joining me today. How's it going, James?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the time you're listening to this, Jazz fans, it will be day one of the regular season. The Jazz will be kicking things off, and we're going to get you primed, ready, and pumped with all the various wrinkles that you can expect for this upcoming NBA and Utah Jazz season, and James is going to do that with me here. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to the podcast and on YouTube. Consider giving myself and James a follow. You'll be able to see our Twitter handles at the bottom of the video and also in the podcast description below. And please consider leaving us a review, a comment, and snagging some Jabber Jazz merch, which helps keep the lights on here at the podcast and keep things rolling out with you. All right, James, so I want to start quick with some roster stuff, because over the weekend we saw that what had been a major storyline during training camp and the preseason, with the Jazz having too many guys in training camp in the preseason than we can actually carry into the season, we saw several cuts. The Jazz announced cutting Saban Lee, Stanley Johnson, Cody Zeller, and Jared Butler. Were you surprised at all? I know we had all of these guys on the short list, but what were your surprises and just general thoughts for these cuts and the roster going forward in the season?
I think I was like a lot of people. I think a lot of us were kind of assuming that we'd see Jared Butler going into the season. He, when you think about it though, and you kind of consider different elements of it, it's not, I guess it shouldn't be all that surprising.
Yeah.
But I think just seeing Jared Butler cut, I think we had all last year had just really hoped that he would turn into something, just because so many of the last draft picks or trades the Jazz have done have been so poor. And so I think getting Jared Butler, who was someone that was really interesting in the draft and honestly had some real potential coming out of Baylor, seeing him cut was a bummer, and I guess I was kind of surprised. I think that was my biggest surprise, honestly. The other two, Zeller going, I don't think anyone was surprised by that. I think it's almost like who they didn't cut surprised you, in all honesty. I mean, Rudy Gay not being cut, I guess because he has a contract still and is not all that surprising, but it is a little surprising he's still on the team. And Udoka Azubuike.
Oh boy,
it makes sense.
Preach to the choir.
I know. I mean, it makes sense why he's on. I've been rooting for him, and there is still a little upside there. I mean, it wasn't too long ago he was nearly touching the top of the backboard with his athleticism and size. I mean, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And I mean, there were times last season where he got on the floor and he looked like an NBA rotation player, like little glimpses. But I'm kind of surprised he wasn't cut. Although it makes a little sense considering how many centers are actually on the team. So, but yeah, I'd say Jared Butler for sure was the number one surprise.
Yeah. For me, you nailed it with Udoka Azubuike. I had pegged him as the guy I thought was definitely going to get cut. Was definitely going to be one of those four. Not just because the Jazz sold off Bojan Bogdanovic, the guy we thought had like the most trade potential after the dominoes of Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell fell, but we essentially traded him for peanuts in Kelly Olynyk, in a sense. I think we all thought he had more trade equity than that. So you trade for a center who ends up being our starting center, and then the rookie center that comes back in the Gobert deal, all of a sudden he pops and is instantly the backup center. And So I just, even though we keep him, I still just, I don't see a great route for Udoka because he's behind those two already. And I just don't see much opportunity for him. And he's still yet to debut. He still wasn't ready for the preseason. And, we'll see when he's available. But thus far, it's been nothing. So, interesting stuff.
I think, though, I guess one thing about this season is what we see now is not what we're going to see in 2 months. And what we see in 2 months is not going to be what we see in 2 more months. So I would not be surprised if we get a lot of backup center Udoka Azubuike. Yeah. Although we did trade for Kelly Olynyk, and apparently from a lot of people, Boston media that I listen to, Danny Ainge really likes Kelly Olynyk. And I don't know if it's just as like a mentor role or just to provide kind of a solid presence that can keep some sort of structure for like the other players. But yeah, Udoka is not, I don't know. There's going to be an injury at some point this year. Olynyk's probably not going to play every game. Udoka will slip into like that backup center, and it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I was surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's now talk about what gets you excited. So we talked about the surprise. Now we know what the roster is, right? That's coming into the season. We're not guessing about those end of the bench guys, but now what's getting you excited? What or who are getting you excited for the season?
What gets me excited for the season is just losses. The thing about, I guess, so maybe this is too, cold-blooded, but there's not a lot of, I like Jared Butler. I think he has potential. Jared Butler's probably not on the Jazz in like 3-4 years anyway. And, at best, Jared Butler, is what, a high-level sixth man, third guard in a rotation, probably. He doesn't really have the size to be like a really high-impact starting guard in the NBA on like a championship team. And really, that's kind of what you kind of have to consider when you're looking at these players, because that's probably what Danny Ainge is thinking is this a player that in 3 or 4 years can be on a championship roster or a roster that's like on that path? And Jared Butler wasn't. And I guess to get back to your question, what gets me excited? Losses get me excited because losses are going to get us to those players that will get us there. I think the other thing that gets me really excited is some of these rotation players that the Jazz have. He hasn't played yet, and it's kind of making me a little bonkers, but Ochai Agbaji gets me excited. He's like a 6'4", 6'5" guard with a beautiful stroke. He has one of the things I've enjoyed is how many offensive rebounds he's gotten. So he's a guy that goes in and can actually get a rebound. So I just want him to play. That's what'll get me excited?
Play him.
Is if Will Hardy can play Ochai Agbaji. That will get me excited. But the other thing is Walker Kessler gets me excited because Walker Kessler to me looks like an NBA rotation player. And that kind of goes back to that question. In 3 or 4 years, can you see Walker Kessler on a championship caliber team? And I can. I think Walker Kessler on a championship team is probably a backup center, but a good one.
Yeah.
If he continues to develop. What we are seeing right now at this moment is pretty good. And if he can kind of develop, become a pretty consistent free throw shooter, we've seen that he has soft hands, he can catch the ball, he can dunk it, he's very, very functional. And he moves a little better than I thought. And so Absolutely. If he can just kind of hone his... So anyways, those are kind of the things that are getting me excited. Anytime we can see one of these young players get on the floor and develop while also losing games so the Jazz can get Victor Wembanyama, who also gets me excited, that's another thing that gets me excited. It gets me excited? Watching highlights of Amen Thompson looking like a 6'8" Vince Carter. That gets me pretty excited. And Scoot Henderson looking like the fastest player on the planet, and he's not even in the NBA yet, that's right. Pretty exciting to me as well. So,
But yeah, we'll definitely be circling back on Ochai and the draft as well. And I echo all your sentiments. I think the thing that makes me so excited and inspired for this season really is just the unknowns of the players, kind of the rotations, of the performances. we kind of got to the point where we knew exactly who Rudy was. We knew exactly who Donovan was, right? We knew he was not going to be putting out anything close to the level of defense that he and others always said he could, right? We knew what Quinn's rotations were. We knew who he was going to play and who he was not going to play. Dante Exum. We knew exactly what the team was, what they did, and what they were going to do. And now we don't, and it's just really exciting. I agree with you on Kessler. I think he's making an immediate impact. I love his high IQ. But there's still a ton more out on him, and I can't wait to see it unfold. And also Sexton, last time we saw him, he was a Donovan Mitchell light. He was 75% of Donovan, and I'm interested to see, hey, can he get back to that level or even exceed it? And so just the unknowns is what gives, I think, a lot of intrigue to this season because for so long we knew exactly what the Jazz would do, who they'd play, how they'd play. And now we don't really, and that's just going to be really fun.
Yeah, I have to say, I guess I'm just kind of diving in, but the first 20 games are brutal for this year.
Yep.
They're brutal. The Jazz are going to win. Honestly, anyone who's listening to this or watching this, go look at the schedule and tell me how they're going to win more than 4 games. Please, and be honest with yourself. Look within your soul and ask yourself, if you're being honest with yourself, how they win more than 4 games. So during those games, we're going to see, can Will Hardy figure out how to, adjust? Are we going to see, Colin Sexton? Does he actually defend? I actually am a little nervous because if Colin Sexton does learn how to defend, then that makes me nervous we were going to win actually more games than we probably should.
I'm personally not worried
right
about it, but
I'm not that worried. He's not that big, honestly. It's funny. I kind of want to go see some games in person this year just to kind of see him because one of the things that's interesting, when you go see Donovan Mitchell up close, if you ever have a chance to go, sit up close near front row, go look at how big Donovan Mitchell is. He's small. He's small. You'll be surprised in person how small he looks. And I wonder if Colin Sexton is actually pretty similar in that way. You're just like, holy cow. And then you'll see someone like LeBron who looks like M. Bison from Street Fighter, and you're just like, there's just no comparison to these two guys. So there's going to be unknowns, but I think the unknowns are kind of individual unknowns. How can Jared Vanderbilt actually develop under Will Hardy? Can he become a player that can be more than just kind of a dunk the ball guy on offense? Because if he can, then I think he has a chance to be a really fun player in the future. If he can't, then he probably gets traded at some point this year and becomes a defensive specialist on a really good team needing that 7th guy or something like that. So
speaking of just, other veterans, we got a ton in all of these trades that we made and we swung. A lot of the focus were on the draft picks and the young players, but we got a lot of veterans, and a lot of them have thus far been rumored in trades and have been rumored as opposing teams throughout the league having interest in them as well. Who's the first vet you think gets traded?
It's a good question. Just kind of, so here's the thing, is a lot of times with these guys, and that's what I've been doing for the last, that's what I always do, I guess, but I just kind of try to read the tea leaves. What is Danny Ainge doing? We know what Jazz media says, and they're, 2 months ago they were telling us the Jazz were really willing to go into the season with Donovan Mitchell. And,
everybody grab your salt shakers.
Yeah, before Rudy Gobert was traded, they were saying, they're willing to make this work, and then they do the complete opposite. And so Jazz media right now is telling us before the preseason started, the Jazz, they might be pretty good. They might win 40 games, wouldn't be surprised. And then they go in the preseason, they lose by 20 to the Spurs. So I think that, I guess I'm not even really answering your question here, but the vets I think get traded are basically the ones that Danny Ainge can get what he thinks they are worth, because that's basically what we've learned from Danny Ainge. He doesn't make the move unless he thinks he can get, I guess 2 things. I think we've learned 2 things, because like you said, we didn't get a lot for Bojan Bogdanovic.
Yeah.
We didn't get what we thought. I got, the things I thought we'd get for Rudy were way more than I thought we'd get for Rudy.
100%, yeah.
And I guess in a way, it was a little more for Donovan than I expected, to be honest. At least pre-Gobert trade. Getting less for Bojan. I thought we'd get a first-round pick for Bojan. I thought, like, surely there's a team out there like the Lakers or something that would give us something. It sounded like they offered us a first, but it was, like, heavily protected. But I think that basically it just boils down to Danny Ainge getting what he wants for Mike Conley. Because here's the other thing is they can just rest Mike Conley. They know that Mike Conley is not going to, like, he's not going to play a lot if they think he's going to help them win games they shouldn't win. So I could see Mike Conley resting on nights they're playing a worse team. You know, oh, back soreness. Oh, back into the back-to-back. Oh, you know, these types of things. And so I don't know if they're actually going to trade Mike Conley. But I guess if I had to predict, it would be Mike Conley because he's he's still a high-level offensive player in terms of efficiency. I don't know if he impacts as much as people think, just because he's not as fast as he was. He's never been a big guy. He's not like, you know, he's not beating people with his quickness. So basically what he is now is kind of a off-the-ball three-point shooter that can kind of run a secondary pick and roll and can run against second units and things like that. But if you start having a lot of things dependent on Mike Conley, we saw in the playoffs, you're in trouble a little bit. But so I think he could be someone that maybe like the Mavericks get interested in. Obviously, the Lakers might get interested in him if things are already going sideways for the Lakers. So we'll see. Like, what happens.
Oh man, those videos of Pat Bev trying to make the huddle work with the Lakers, and Russ is just doing his own thing. Oh my goodness!
Well,
you'd love to see the dysfunction.
The Lakers bloggers over the Silver Screen and Roll, they are just. Right. They are already devastated. They're already having a bad time. It's not good.
Brutal.
But I think the players that we're not going to trade is Jordan Clarkson. Why would you trade Jordan Clarkson? He is he is wearing the Tank Commander helmet. He is fantastic. And the best part about this season, one thing I'm excited about, is watching Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton play My Turn on offense. That's going to be amazing because it's going to be really inefficient. And we're gonna have every time Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton are on the floor together, it's my favorite. It's absolutely my favorite, and it is just absolutely like little baby steps towards lottery night. And so, but I think Mike Conley will eventually be traded. I think he's probably the first. I don't know. You know, we may see some other trades like. Oh, you know what? Scratch that. I think Malik Beasley gets traded first.
Okay.
I think the Jazz will find a way to trade him soon. Because the thing about Malik Beasley is he's a good high-level shooter. I forgot about Malik Beasley. I think there's a team out there that does give a first-round pick for Malik Beasley. Because I think they do legitimately want to play Ochai Agbaji. Like I think that Danny Ainge legitimately wants him to get on the floor. It's better to develop him than just have Malik Beasley shooting 42% from three. I mean that's great. It's not really doing anything for the Jazz when he could be doing that for the Lakers or whoever. So.
Yeah, Will Hardy, you know, by all reports, he is going all out trying to win every single game, optimize the roster, optimize every single minute. And if that's the case, having Beasley and Jordan Clarkson on the team is resulting, we're seeing it means that Ochai is just not playing. And so the longer that those two stay on the team, it just means we're not going to see him. And and I think that's kind of where we swerve a little bit. You were going to say something, though.
Oh, I was going to say, that's actually something I was thinking about the other day, and I was going to write about it, and I just forgot. But you were reminding me. Honestly, like, of all the people that develop this year, isn't Will Hardy the most important? You want him to get, like, so he's used to, like, running lineups and units and playing his best players and getting them comfortable, managing personalities. I wonder if the first third of this season is really just like Will Hardy development. It actually works out perfectly for the Jazz because the start of the season is absolutely brutal. It's awful. They're going to lose. So even if you don't trade Mike Conley or not, you're still developing Will Hardy. And because that's the thing is like, you know who's going to be on this team in 4 years with whoever the Jazz draft? Will Hardy is. So really, isn't he like the most important? I could see like literally every player on this team not being on the team in 4 years. Even like Colin Sexton, who has a contract through that. If you go look at the Jazz contracts, there's like 2 players that are on the Jazz in 3 years.
Yep.
So honestly, Will Hardy's probably the most important. And so I think this first part of the year, and I think he's going to continue to do it. He's going to play. He's going to hurt my feelings. He's going to hurt everyone's feelings. And Ochai Agbaji, when you have Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, Malik Beasley, it's really hard to find minutes for Ochai Agbaji. And so that's why Malik Beasley probably gets traded at some point. He's actually a pretty similar player to Ochai Agbaji, kind of more of a spot-up shooter, play off of a guard type player. So I just think Malik's probably traded soon. And
yeah, I could see it. Yeah,
and it's a chance for Will Hardy to manage those personalities. It seems like he's doing a pretty good job, to be honest. The players seem happy in a situation that could be kind of, someone like Malik Beasley could get pretty frustrated pretty fast, and he seems like he's handling it. So I think it's a good sign.
Yeah, off the court, cohesion type, buy-in, relationships, communication. I think Hardy's already there. It's some of that on the court stuff that I think he's making mistakes of. Why wouldn't he, right? It's hey, in 3-4 years, if those mistakes are kind of happening, that's when you're just like, oh, hey, is this the guy who carries us into the next era? But really quickly, it's interesting, those guys you picked because I kind of swerved the other way, thinking, oh, hey, Jordan Clarkson might be the first that gets traded. And I totally get your thoughts about him being kind of that culture fit, excellent contract, being kind of this connector. And I think all those things are true. I just think he's definitely got a market. Mm-hmm. And we've already seen some teams being whispered as really interested in him. And I just kind of wonder if another team almost makes him available, given the package, almost in a similar way that Rudy, he was kind of available, but all of a sudden when Minnesota, came to Danny Ainge, it was like, here's our offer. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, Gobert is available, So
mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I was thinking on the first vet that gets traded, and maybe a vet that doesn't. I was thinking Mike Conley just because, everything we've been hearing is that contract. People don't like that $14 million guarantee next year.
It's actually a large amount. I mean, he's making like
it really
22
is.
next year.
And I honestly got a lot of empathy for him when he started talking about the family situation. He's like, even if I get traded, my family's staying here. They're doing the sports here. They love the school. We adore our neighborhood, our friends, our neighbors. So I actually kind of got a little empathy for him there, and it almost feels like, that Jazz, if it comes around and it works great, I think they'll do it, but maybe not go out of their way. Ultimately, I think we can agree that the Jazz are not in a position, as they have been, and maybe shouldn't have been in the past, at the point where they need to be attaching assets to get rid of these guys.
Oh, definitely not. And that's the best thing about the Danny Ainge era so far is even though we didn't get a lot for Bojan, we did not give up anything.
Right.
We've seen the Jazz make such boneheaded trades where they're giving up first-round picks. I mean, next year we have to be a bottom 10 team or we give up our pick to the Thunder. And we're competing with the Thunder this year for Victor Wembanyama. So it's just, that's the other thing is and like you said, I mean, Jordan Clarkson could get traded if Milwaukee calls and said, hey, we'll give you, an unprotected first next year or something like that, then I'm sure Danny will just be like, okay, and do it. But it kind of just depends on who needs him. And I'm sure Danny knows that. Someone's going to have an injury in the first 20 games of someone, and they'll come calling, and the Jazz are definitely open for business,
Yeah, 100%. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some lineups and specifically some rotations. We saw some glimpses of what Will Hardy is likely to do starting the season, with the starting lineup, and the backups are a little bit more nebulous. We saw him getting a bit creative. We didn't see Talen Horton-Tucker at all in that first game until the very end, but then he started seeing some heavier minutes in a backup role in the subsequent games. So what has kind of been your favorite rotation wrinkle? It could be, a single player, combinations, or just, general strategy. What's kind of been your favorite wrinkle?
For me, it's just, I've actually been surprised how fun it's been to kind of watch Talon Horton-Tucker, like you mentioned, he's just been fun. I have been kind of surprised at how good he is at getting to the rim. He looks like he's eaten a lot of cheeseburgers this offseason. So the fact that he can get to the rim with how big he is it's pretty impressive. And he's legitimately big. He looks like he's 6'8", 6'9". And I do like kind of I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see more and more of him, because he kind of fits that mold a little bit of what you need to win in the league. You need like a big wing that can initiate offense and pass, and he kind of, in a weird way, fits that role. That he's like in the mold, obviously, not even remotely near the guys like the Luka Doncic's out there, but he is similar in that he's got big size. He plays from the wing, and you can create an offense kind of like that where he can initiate. So I think it's kind of been fun to watch him play. And, obviously the Walker Kessler minutes have been just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He does, he's had a few, his last 2-3 games, he does something every night where I'm like, holy cow, this guy's, legit. You know who else? Just watching Lauri Markkanen. He's fun. Yeah. He's a fun player. I think just watching him kind of show that he's more than just kind of a spot-up three-point shooter who's big. He can do a little bit. There's a little bit of Bojan there with kind of a little bit of a mid-range turnaround and things like that. So those are some of the things that I've had fun watching. And honestly, my most fun will be seeing Agbaji get more minutes. He might. Once we see him, that's going to be my favorite.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad he plays. I don't even care. I want to watch him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the first thing that's going to make me angry is if he plays really well, and I'll be like, "Why, Will? Why? Why did we wait?" No, it's not. We haven't even started yet, So
right, yeah. We're just getting our feet wet. I think my favorite, kind of wrinkle with rotations and kind of how the lineups have shaken out, probably is Walker Kessler, and you touched on it. It felt like from immediately in that Toronto game. Backup center. All the backup center minutes. And I know that, kind of over the off season when the trades happened, we kind of thought, oh, you know what, we might deploy Jared Vanderbilt or Lauri Markkanen spot minutes at the 5. And I do think we'll see, some permutations of that for little stretches. But I totally did not expect Walker Kessler to cement himself as the clear backup 5 with Cody Zeller.
Mm-hmm.
Like him or not, the dude's lasted 8-9 years in the NBA as a rotational big man. And so it wasn't just a given that a rookie would just come in and from the first preseason game just immediately be, I'm the backup 5. And I really, really like his high IQ. And I think the feather in his cap compared to Doak, because he does not compare to Doak in the athleticism, in the frame, not even close. However, what I've been impressed with Kessler is that he strings together 4, 5, 6 good decisions, and he'll inevitably have some bad decisions. And he'll inevitably get tricked, right, by these awesome players. But I've just seen him, string together a couple minutes or several plays sequences in a row of just good decisions, solid decisions. And I just think that is a major, major win and something I didn't anticipate in preseason. We haven't even started yet.
No, I think he's a blast. And the player he kind of makes me think of is honestly Hassan Whiteside a little bit, where I kind of thought that he has a chance because he broke the single season record at Auburn for block shots. The guy knows how to block shots, and he's big, and he knows how to catch the ball, and he can kind of do things with it when he's near the rim. So he kind of reminded me of Whiteside. He actually moves better than I thought. So that's going to be kind of a wrinkle. How well does he move in space? I don't know if he'll ever be a starting level center on a really good team, but I think he can develop into a really good backup big on a really good team, especially if he can move his feet. Because and he's not a stretch big, and I don't think he needs to be. He doesn't have to be. I think that right there is probably the only reason why he's probably not even starting for us at this point, because I think he's been better than Olynyk in a lot of ways, if we're being honest. I mean, his foul rate is that of a rookie.
Yeah.
He fouls a lot, and that's just comes with being a rookie. But if he could stretch the floor, I wouldn't be surprised if he would be starting. The only issue is that I think the big thing that they're trying to do, it's pretty clear, is they want to develop Jared Vanderbilt.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Olynyk fits with Vanderbilt better because Olynyk can stretch the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that provides a little more of a better unit on offense. But if Vanderbilt could shoot the three, or if Kessler could shoot the three, I think they'd be starting, or at some point. But because of that, I think, that's probably why they haven't been playing. I do think that's a big thing. They have made a very big point to develop Jared Vanderbilt. We saw in that first preseason game, he led the team with like 6-something assists. So obviously they're working on some things where they have Jared Vanderbilt initiating from the wing. It's the same kind of idea. You have a big player who is initiating things from the wing. And Jared Vanderbilt's doing it. Talon Horton-Tucker's doing it. We'll probably see it more. It's probably why we see some of these guards get traded, so we can see a little more of that, because we know what Danny Ainge likes to do. He likes to draft big scoring wings. It was Paul Pierce, and then it was Jason Tatum, and then in this draft we'll see. If it's not Wembanyama, I wouldn't be surprised if he took Amen Thompson too. I'm sorry, I'm already going to the draft. But I wouldn't be surprised if Amen Thompson is like number 2 on his board. Or like Cam Whitmore. But Amen Thompson, yeah. Anyway, so I think they're already prepping for next season. I think it's like figuring out who on this roster will be on it next year.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Most of these guys are not going to be. So, a lot of this stuff is spilt milk. But, yeah, if we can see a little bit of... that's the reason why I want to see Ochai Agbaji. Because I see him fitting on those types of teams. And I just want to see him defend, actually. That's the other thing. Can he defend? That's what I want to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly, we touched on, our favorite wrinkles, and clearly Ochai is our least favorite result from what we've seen in lineups and rotations. Mm-hmm. Just the fact that he's not playing until the very end of games, where, frankly, as the 14th pick in last year's draft, he should be playing with better players than Stanley Johnson and, right? A lot of the guys we just cut.
Well, yeah, and the thing that was frustrating, too, in this preseason is, and I was rooting for Jared Butler, but he was not doing a very good job of setting other guys up. It was kind of like he's an isolation player, but we got plenty of those. We got Colin Sexton. We got Jordan Clarkson. That's kind of what, what's his name, Jared Butler has become. When Ochai Agbaji's on the floor, you need someone who can set him up, which is probably why Mike Conley's going to stay on this team for a while. Just another isolation scorer is not something... Another undersized isolation scorer is not what we needed. We have like 5 of those, which is probably why Jared Butler's, gone. So, yeah, that's probably why. And so, yeah, I just want to see Joe Ochai. I want to see Agbaji get all the minutes. All of them. We'll see. I bet he will, too. Danny Ainge isn't stupid. He's not dumb. He's thinking the same things we are. I don't know. He has no... And that's the other thing, too, is people need to consider, is that he traded for him. Like, Danny Ainge traded for Ochai. It's not like Dennis Lindsay, who had his, like, loyalties to players like you mentioned, Dante Exums or Rudy Gobert's, and wanting to do these types of... he didn't have any sort of loyalty to any of them, including Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, and all these guys. So,
what made the Cleveland deal work wasn't the 3 first-round picks, because to even get in the same book, Cleveland had to put in those picks. What got them on the same page were the pick swaps and Ochai Agbaji. And that's what made it work. Mm-hmm. And, Colin Sexton, doing that sign-in trade, that's what, helped make the money work, and it made sense because Cleveland was already out on him. But ultimately, that's what, greased the wheels. I am desperate to see a lineup of Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, Simone Fontecchio, Lauri Markkanen, and Jared Vanderbilt. I need to see this lineup. And with Ochai relegated to, the third unit, we have yet to see it in the preseason, and I cannot wait to see those 5 on the floor together.
That'll be really fun. It's going to be fun. Actually, it's funny. People were so worried about the All-Star game, and oh no, we're going to have an All-Star game in Utah and not have Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Well, guess what? They still have like the World versus the U.S. game. So we're going to see
Yeah.
Simone Fontecchio in that game. We'll probably see Rising Stars. We'll see probably Walker Kessler on the Rising Stars game if he plays pretty well off the bench. We'll get a chance to see him. Simone Fontecchio, you mentioned him. He will probably be in that World versus the U.S. game, and that'll be fun to watch. I think Ochai Agbaji can be a really fun player if he just gets a chance. And so hopefully Danny just makes a trade here pretty soon. And I love Mike Conley. I like your idea with Colin Sexton, how he can set them up because, he's on the team for 5 years. We might as well play him. Mike Conley, can we play him with Ochai just to get him a nice setup guy, or just trade him so that we can get these guys more minutes? That's what I want.
Yeah, 100%. So the other interesting thing, rotation lineup-wise, is that Colin Sexton, outside of the San Antonio game where Conley set out due to rest, interested to see if we see a lot more of that, as the season gets underway. But
for sure.
is Colin Sexton came off the bench and has continued to come off the bench. And I think a lot of us thought, hey, he was healthy coming into the preseason. Ultimately, they asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, I'm just, getting my legs back under me and kind of acclimating back to, this level of basketball again. So curious with Colin and Ochai, how soon before we see Colin in the starting lineup and Ochai just in the rotation? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's really up to Will Hardy. And Will Hardy's been having Colin Sexton come off the bench, and it kind of makes a little bit of sense. I mean, it is nice to have that sixth man who can score. And I do think Will Hardy's been kind of doing things in a way that kind of prepares for these guys down the road. Or at least doing things and setting guys in situations where he thinks they'll play best. And I think in his opinion, for Colin Sexton, that is playing off the bench. I think he's going to be a sixth man. I don't think he's going to really be starting anytime soon. Just because I think that's kind of the role they envision for him. I'm sure he'll start a good amount of games this year. Like you said, Mike Conley's going to get a lot of rest. They're not going to overwork Mike Conley. There's no reason to overplay Mike Conley. I mean, the reason you play Mike Conley is so that you can help other players on the team know what it's like to play with a high-level point guard setting you up and running a system and having that kind of veteran presence and things like that. Good locker room, things like that. But winning games is not important this year. It's just not. And so I think that the role I see for Colin Sexton is off the bench, and I think he just is going to be allowed to just go score. It's interesting because that's kind of the same role that Jordan Clarkson has, but we've seen Jordan Clarkson start more than Colin Sexton. So maybe you're right. Maybe there is just some trades out there for Jordan Clarkson that just haven't been finalized. I don't know. But I think they do probably look at... The dream for me is to have Ochai Agbaji start and then have Colin Sexton off the bench. And those are kind of like the roles I could see them for the future. If Ochai Agbaji doesn't develop, whatever, who cares? We are going to get our best players in the draft next year anyway. And we have so many draft picks from these others that, it's okay. But I would like to see him... I would rather see Ochai Agbaji start than Colin Sexton, because I think Colin Sexton can just prove to be this really nice scorer. I mean, he's been pretty efficient in his time on the floor. He hasn't been a good defender. He's just not. He hasn't really proven that he can. Maybe he will this year. That's something to watch. But overall, I think his role is a heat check, come in, kind of that energy scorer that comes in and gets buckets, and that's his job. And I think that's kind of what they see for him, because he can do that, and he's shown that he's kind of a guy. And that's an important... I'm sorry, I'm just going off, but that's kind of an important skill, is having a guy that can come off the bench, especially in the playoffs, and can get you 10 to 15 points in a game. And that you don't have to set him up. You don't have to run a play for him. He can go and isolate and get you a bucket here and there. And I think they want to develop that so that in 2 or 3 years he can do it. When Victor Wembanyama's on the bench, let Colin Sexton go get points. So I don't know. So that's kind of what I see for him. And I'm if he starts, great. I just don't really. when I watch him play, that's not really what I see. I mean, I think we are so used to hoping Donovan could kind of be that, and Quinn Snyder didn't really give him a chance to be that, and the front office didn't either by bringing over Mike Conley. But I just don't know if anything, I think Donovan Mitchell was a better playmaker than Colin Sexton is, and Colin Sexton.
Oh yeah, I think so.
So I just don't see that. I just see him as a sixth man. Is kind of what I do, especially at his size. If he was like 6'6", 6'5", then it would be a different story. But he's not, So
yeah, I've kind of come to the opinion similar to you that I don't think you see those big shifts. Abaji clearly in the rotation or Colin Sexton in the starting lineup, unless one of those 3 vet guards that are staples of the rotation in Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, Malik Beasley, unless one of them's traded. And that does make me sad, particularly on Oshai, though it makes a lot of sense as you go through the thought process on Colin. Makes a lot of sense for why he's likely to be a staple of the bench.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean we say bench as if it's a bad thing, but in the playoffs you have 6-7 man rotation. And each role is vital, and we've seen that. And being the sixth man, it's like an important role. And he'll be on the floor with starters and probably play 20-25 minutes. But like you said, that's kind of where I kind of land.
All right, so we're gonna shift gears again a little bit now and talk major storylines that will be percolating throughout the entirety of the season. And clearly, James' favorite is going to be surrounding the draft, where the Jazz will have not 1, not 2, but 3 first-round picks in the upcoming draft. They're going to have their own pick, which is fully unprotected. They're going to have the Minnesota pick, fully unprotected. And then they will have the worst pick of the Philadelphia 76ers, Brooklyn Nets, and Houston Rockets. So a few bites at the apple in next year's draft, and it is a doozy of a draft. Everybody's ultimate goal, everybody's salivating over the alien, Victor Wembanyama. But what I'm curious for you is, who are you still curious about in the draft? Who's that guy up in the top? We know about Victor, right? We even know about Scoot, really. That Ignite Metropolitan '92, that 2-game matchup told us a ton about those two guys. But who's that other guy in that top tier that you're like, I got to be checking in on him throughout this whole season because I want to know more about that guy?
Well, I think people need to understand that Scoot Henderson Victor Wembanyama game was I think it's almost undersold how big of a deal that was, because last year Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson were actually in similar situations, because Victor Wembanyama was coming off the bench and he was putting up I was watching those things and I was talking to some of my friends who cover that stuff, and he is just, last year you were seeing these flashes, you're like, oh my gosh, can you imagine what happens when they actually let him start and actually play? And the same thing with Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson was on the G League Ignite last year. He was there. We could have all gone and watched Scoot Henderson. Problem was, he was coming off the bench. So that's what was so cool, is this is the first time both of them are starting. Both of their teams are making them the focal point, and they absolutely just, that's why those two guys really are number 1, number 2. I think you can argue number 2 a little bit, actually. But both of them just have the mentality. Just to add to the Victor Wembanyama stuff, I was talking to Rafael Barlow, who's really close friends. Well, not close friends, but he has a good connection with Rudy's agent. Well, it's Rudy and Victor's agent.
Right, correct.
Victor is honestly, it's just gonna crush my soul when we don't win him, because he's just it's not even just the talent. It's not even the talent. The guy is so smart, apparently. And it just makes sense. You see, what he was doing a year ago to what he's doing now, the development of his game. He just picks it up. Things that take some players maybe a season or two to kind of get comfortable and and it kind of dawns on him how to do this, and if I do that, he's just like picking it up, and he's not even in the league yet. So obviously Victor's number one. There's no question. Anyone who thinks that he's not going number one is a moron.
I did think prior to that two game standoff, between Metropolitan 92 and the G League Ignite, I thought that there was a slim chance that, hey, if medicals were slightly suspect, or people might just psych themselves out.
That's the
there's
thing.
No chance anymore. There's no chance.
I saw all that stuff and I was like, you guys. I'm telling you, this is pure, utter silliness. Go watch it. Go look. It's just, he's out of this world. He's out of this world. And so and the thing is even for, people who have followed him so much, like even Raphael, who was at that game, who's following him more than anyone, just, it was mind-boggling. It's beyond even what you kind of expected. Yeah. Anyways, I guess to get to your question, I think Victor and Scoot really are like probably number one and number two on most people's boards.
Right.
I've looked at a little bit with Nick Smith. You look at this draft though, it really is unreal. I mean, what you want out of your top pick is you want the tools of a superstar. If you come out of the draft, you want someone that has, the tools to be that thing, because you can be the most athletic, the most, gifted with skill and like all these different things like Donovan Mitchell, but in the end, he's 6'1". And maybe not even that. He might be 6 foot. And that's just going to put a cap on what you can be, unless you become just an out of this world shooter like a Damian Lillard or something like that. But that's why Scoot Henderson, I think there's a little bit of debate on whether you want to take him too. You probably are, because it's a for sure all-star player you're getting, just for sure. But I tell you what, Amen Thompson gets me so... He cooks my bacon, he rubs my feet, and he puts me to bed at night, and I sleep really well. He is like, I'm telling you, you go watch Amen Thompson and Asar Thompson play, and it is like, I'm going to get emotional. No. You watch passing. These guys. No, it's not even the passing. I don't.
That's what gets me. That's what gets me.
Well, that's what gives Amen the kind of the leg up on Asar a little bit. Yep. Most people consider him to be a better player, and he's kind of showing that. I mean, the Overtime Elite is this kind of, I don't even completely understand what it is. It's kind of its own league they've created in a way that's not the G League, but they are setting up exhibitions, which is cool. It would be really cool if the Thompson twins could play Metropolitans and play Victor. That would be really cool.
Holy cow! Or if they could, that'd be insane.
Or Scoot, like if they could find a way to get them. I mean, I think this is another thing that maybe people aren't even talking about too. Is like this is the death of college basketball, because if you can set up these games where you have, set up exhibitions where let's watch Victor versus Scoot, or now let's set up Asar and Amen versus Victor, and just what does that look like? It's like, and it's fun. I will watch all of it. It's fun. So anyways, the thing about Asar and Amen is their athleticism is out of this world. They might be the best athletes we've ever seen. That's what's crazy. In a draft where we're seeing Victor Wembanyama, who is a player like we've never seen, we've just never seen anything like him. I know, Tony Jones has kind of mentioned, what's his name, Ralph Thompson or whoever. No, Victor's better than that. And Scoot Henderson actually kind of reminds me of, do you remember John Wall when he came in the league? He was pretty amazing. Pretty awesome. That's kind of who Scoot reminds me of a little bit. If he can be a better shooter, then he'll be incredible. But he kind of reminds me of John Wall a little bit. We've kind of seen Scoot in other players, but the athleticism with Amen Thompson, they look like they're on springs. It looks so effortless. It's really crazy. Like, it honestly looks so... It's wild. And it's just, like, so smooth and easy. And so they are a lot of fun. They have, like, all the potential in the world. And that's what Raphael... I had to talk to Raphael and do him on the SLC Dunk podcast because he put in a little scenario that is actually my favorite scenario. I think that, like, if the Jazz don't get Victor, I want them to trade all their picks so they can get Amen and Asar and put them on the same team and have them be your two wings. Because, one, you'll have the most athletic set of wings in the league immediately. They can develop together. And apparently they, like what he said, is they are very, like, they're very much similar to, like, other twins. They want to be together. And so it's kind of a situation where, like, you know, maybe you keep the twins for 10 years because, you know, it's hard to sign both Asar and Amen. If you draft them both, you can give them the big contracts and keep them on the same team, and maybe they're... I don't know. That's my favorite little scenario. Yeah. And I actually... If you win the number 2 pick, it's honestly a devastating thing because you missed out on Victor. Yeah, you get Scoot. And, yeah, everyone's, like, trying to make ourselves feel better. Like, oh, Scoot's great. No, you missed out on Victor. It just... But maybe you can trade Scoot and get Asar and Amen somehow, you know? Maybe you can figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah, we've been talking about it to death, but just the way the lottery is now you're at such a disadvantage from how the old lottery odds were, you know, in those top spots. And now 86% of the time, if you play this out 100 times, 86 out of 100 times you're missing out on Victor, and that's just... Yeah, you said it pretty appropriately earlier. When we miss out on Victor, we just need to start thinking that way. When we miss out on him so we don't fall into a deep state of depression. But I totally get what you're saying on the Thompson twins.
Oh, I love him. I haven't, you know, Cam Whitmore is...
He's the guy I was going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy that's just absolute physical beast. Just an absolute... He looks like one of those guys that's just going to tear the rim off the backboard every time he dunks it. He's just a beast. I don't know how else to describe him. Just incredible.
He plays so much bigger than what he's listed at 6'6", and you know, I'm not exactly sure how much he can shoot and stuff, but you know, he's already there athletically and with the body. I mean, the dude is just so solid, plays so big. And he's the guy I'm just going to be checking on a lot because I'm just not exactly sure who or what he is. But I'm just really excited to see, like, hey, when he's not the biggest and the tallest guy out there, you know, he's going to be, you know, on par with people, but he's no longer just going to dwarf people like he is in high school. And so when he's comparable to people, you know, what style of play does he gravitate to? So that's who I'm going to be checking in as the process goes along.
Yeah, you watch his highlights, and the guy is just an absolute dunk highlight reel. And it's just like he's so strong. You can just see it. And I think that's the other thing, too, is kind of looking at the history of what Danny Ainge has drafted. It's been wings. So I really just think, you know, I would give anything in this world to be in the draft room with them and just be there and see what their draft big board looks like. But obviously Victor's one. I mean, there's no question. But then I don't know if Scoot is, like, number 2. I don't know. You know, the thing about Danny is he killed that draft where he got Jason Tatum. Because remember, he won the number 1 overall pick. He won the number 1 overall pick. That's the thing. Could you imagine if Danny Ainge wins the number 1 overall pick and trades out of it? Because he decides maybe, like, Amen Thompson is a better player. Yeah, I doubt that happens because, you know, I think Danny knew that... I forgot his name that went with number 1, but I think he knew that he wasn't, and he made the right move.
An interesting thought exercise is to think about who is the best player currently in the NBA that the GM who lands that number 1 overall pick and can draft Victor, what's the best player in the league that would entice a GM to actually trade the pick that will eventually be Wembanyama? I don't know the answer. Maybe no one? I don't know, genuinely.
The ceiling is insane. It's really like I don't know who I would trade. Oh, that's the question. If the Jazz win the number 1 pick, what would you actually trade that for? Like, I'm not trading it for Steph Curry. Steph Curry's got a year left. I'm not trading it for. I mean, I don't even think I'd trade it for Luka Doncic. Maybe
it's truly unprecedented.
he has potential to be not just like the best player in the league, but one of the best players ever. And so I don't know. It's a wild thought, but Giannis, I guess. But then you still have to build a team around him. Man.
Yeah, the one interesting one is just, Zion Williamson and all of the picks that New Orleans has. They're within a stone's throw of the draft capital Utah has now, right? They're not too far behind, the Jazz in Oklahoma City. But I don't know if you were actually able to be that lucky and get that number one pick, do you really have the stones? I
just don't think you do. I mean, even if you trade, you get all those picks to get a guy like Victor.
Yep.
That's why you do it.
Okay, so the other storyline that will be interesting this year is the Minnesota Timberwolves. We know that third pick, that's the worst of the Rockets, 76ers, and Nets. That one's going to be in the mid to late 20s, pretty surely. The Minnesota one has a lot of variance there, and it seems like any national podcast you listen to, everybody's either super in on Minnesota or fairly out on Minnesota. And so you'll see them as high as, the 2 or 3 seed in the West, or in the play-in, depending on who you talk to. And that's the one that's going to be really interesting because of that variance. I mean, could you imagine Minnesota ends up in the 7th seed and things just break terribly and they fall out of the play-in?
That would be... It's the only thing is that, and we know this from watching Rudy. Rudy raises your floor to a pretty high level.
Yep.
It's just really hard to lose a lot of games when Rudy Gobert's playing. Now, if Rudy gets hurt, that's one thing, but when Rudy's on the floor, it's just hard to lose games just because his defense is that impactful. We're already kind of seeing it a little bit. They're trying to, include him in the offense, and I think they can do a better job. I'm glad I don't have to worry about that anymore. I mean, let them let them have that be their problem they talk about every night. But I just don't see them not being at least. I just think they're going to be top 3 in the West. I just have a hard time not seeing them win a lot of games. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. And I know, I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm Rudy biased. But I just, even if Cat isn't very good at defending people at the 4 spot, and Anthony Edwards is kind of a variable with them because he does have really big potential.
Yeah, he's their ceiling right there.
Yeah, he's like the guy. Does he take another leap? Does he become an even more efficient scorer with his athleticism and becomes just kind of this unbelievable player? He has the potential to be kind of that guy. I mean, honestly, Anthony Edwards has a chance to be the best just with his physical tools, one of the top 5 player. But that's their question mark. Can he?
Yeah.
But I think the thing is Rudy being on that team does raise their floor. It's just hard to lose games when Rudy Gobert's on your team. That's kind of just
I have a real hard time seeing them having worse than about the 7th best record in the league.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly their floor.
Yeah, so that basically means at least from where we stand, we're thinking a mid-20s pick in the first round. Nothing to sneeze at. The Jazz, have missed out on their own pick right there in that spot for, a season or 2 in the past. So it'll be awesome to have that asset. But it's going to be something that we're going to check in on throughout the entire season. It's a big storyline because all of a sudden, worst case scenario, things happen to where all of a sudden that pick's in the lottery. Mm-hmm. Ooh. Really
well, if that falls in the lottery and we get 2 shots at Victor, I mean that's incredible.
It would be massive.
I'm looking up just what. Let's see, what was Minnesota last year defensively? I mean, this is.
I think they were 12th, if I remember from cleaning the glass.
Yeah, see that's 12. Were they 12th? I know they were better than you thought, and they were
a little better than you thought. Yeah. They mostly did it kind of off the stuff that the Jazz have never done, turnovers.
Well, and I think part of that was Jared Vanderbilt kind of made them.
Yeah.
This is not loading for me, but I think they were better than you thought. But they don't have Jared Vanderbilt, who, by the way, was coming off the bench for them anyway, so it's not like he was playing a ton of minutes. You had, let's see, so they had, what was his name? We traded for him, Patrick Beverly, who I think is actually, honestly, a little underrated. But having
13th.
Rudy Gobert, were they 13th? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think having Rudy Gobert makes you a top 10 defense, and it's just hard to lose a lot of games when you're a top 10 defense. It's
Absolutely.
really hard. And Rudy is efficient on offense, so he's going to add, 4 to 6 points a game of efficiency for them because of his offensive putbacks and things like that, and his rolling to the rim, and so it's just they're not going to lose to the bad teams in the league. It's going to be a little bit similar to the Jazz's number 1 seed season. It's just like they crushed the bad teams. They won relatively comfortably against the average teams, and then it was interesting against the good teams.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be kind of what happens with the Wolves. Like, they are going to absolutely decimate bad teams, and then what'll be interesting is how good they are against, like, the Clippers and the Bucks and all these, like, good teams. How do they look against those types of guys? So, but I just have a hard time seeing them being below 7. That means they got an injury of some sort that really set them back.
All right, no season preview would be complete without us giving some predictions on the season that will inevitably show how amateur we really are. But it's fun nonetheless. So let's dive right in with kind of a wins projection and where that kind of translates to the end goal, which is our kind of ranking pre-lottery. So I'll start. I'm thinking 23 wins for the Jazz this year. And I think that puts them with the 4th best lottery odds, which is just a hair below the ultimate best odds of 14%. I think that puts you at 12.5%. Ultimately, very insignificant, the difference there. Right, in the old system, that would have been like 13 percentage points. Now it's 1.5. It's really not that much. And at the 4th best odds, if there's 5-6 guys who are true franchise players, right? You've got Wembanyama, who's generational, but then you've got 5 to 6 guys who are true franchise, potential-ridden players. Being the 4th best odds pretty much guarantees you're in the 70% range of being in a position to draft them after the lottery is complete. So I think that we'll probably be tied about with one other team, with 23 wins, and depending how the season shakes out, we may lose or gain the tiebreaker there or something. But I think Oklahoma City and San Antonio are going to out-tank us, and it's going to be hard to catch them.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good guess. 23 wins seems pretty like a smart pick. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win like 18 games. Oh
my gosh, that'd be pretty awesome.
Danny Ainge, to me, here's the thing. He's given me everything I dreamed of and more. And I'm going to ride this.
You've been asking for this for like 2 years.
I have, and he's given me everything I've wanted this year. And I don't think he's going to stop, because everything I thought they probably, it was things I was scared of saying sometimes, because I get on Twitter and I say something and I have like 50 people come at me and say, "You're an idiot, go away." And it's like, okay. So you get like afraid to like say what you're actually thinking, and he's done it all. Traded Rudy, traded Donovan, traded Bojan, traded all of them, and then a better haul of picks than I dreamed. I thought Rudy was gonna get us like maybe 2 firsts, maybe, and what we got was just wild. So I think, and I sometimes I have to even remind myself, because I get on Twitter just like everyone else is, and I read these things that everyone says, and I was writing about the Jazz during the Corbin years and before then when they were really bad. And every year before then, believe me, people were saying, Richard Jefferson's pretty good. David Locke told me that he doesn't turn the ball over ever, so maybe we win like 5 extra games. That was going on then too. But like Danny Ainge, the guy who's been in more fights in the league because he's one of the most competitive guys out there. I just don't see that guy getting punched in the face by whoever multiple times, letting himself lose to San Antonio and like Oklahoma, like Sam Presti. I bet Danny Ainge looks at Sam Presti and just thinks, "You serious? This guy's going to get the better." No, I just don't see it. I think Danny Ainge is going to absolutely let the Jazz lose every game he possibly can. And if at the slightest sniff of them being better than they should be, we will see Mike Conley traded. To whoever, the Orlando Magic, whoever, to try to make those losses come. Because that just truly, they've already done the hardest part. The hardest part is already over. Now it's losing games, people already make fun of the Jazz with the uniforms. You might as well lose the games too. I just, the hardest part is already done. I just have a hard time, it's hard for me to say, yeah, we traded a franchise center who wanted to be here, loved it here. Everyone loved him a lot. We also traded a guard that could score and got a shoe deal on a Utah Jazz basketball team, and we traded those guys, but we're not going to trade, Jordan Clarkson. We're not going to trade Mike Conley. Come on. I guess I could be wrong. Maybe it really is important to them to build a culture and whatnot. I don't know. There's parts of me that are like, is he not trading Rudy Gay because he wants it to detonate the locker room? Is there little things going on that you're maybe he's doing that just to, I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing Danny Ainge not competing for that number one draft pick.
So what do you think? Does 18 wins get the Jazz, the worst record and cement that number one spot? Because even though 1, 2, and 3 have the same lottery odds, if one doesn't end up winning the lottery or isn't picked, they are first in the queue after the 4 teams selected. So it does matter. It just doesn't matter that much for the best odds to win that number one pick, but it still matters. Does 18 wins do it?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I was looking at it last year. The Houston Rockets had 20 wins, and they had the worst record in the league. And if we do what the Rockets did, because didn't the Rockets get the 3rd pick overall?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is
that puts
they
you
got
right
skipped twice.
Yep, that puts you right in line for
Ahmed
Ahmed
Thompson. That's right. That's why I'm let's go watch a lot of Ahmed tape. But anyways, I mean, I would be, if that's what happened, I'd be fine with that. Because the thing is yes, the lottery odds are flattened. Yes, it's the same if you're 2 or 3. But if you're let's say someone jumps both, let's say you're the number 2 and number 1 is the Thunder, and someone jumps from
it better
7
not be the
8.
Thunder. I'm just
I know.
saying. It better
but
not
that's
be.
Oh my gosh! They've been trying so hard. It would be so funny if we got it after 1 year of trying. But anyways, the thing is let's say they're 1 and we're 2, and a team jumps from 6, and then another team from 8. That means we're at 4 instead of 3. So it's that matters. That really matters because want. If you miss out on Victor and Ahmed, and Scoot and Ahmed because you wanted to win a couple extra games, I mean, that's devastating. That to me is just I don't know. So I think they're going to compete for it. I don't know if they'll be bad enough. They definitely got to move Mike Conley to be bad enough. They've definitely got to move Malik Beasley. They're going to be traded at some point. Conley and Beasley will be moved. They may even be willing to move one of those late first-round picks this year to do it, to clear space, and then they'll just sell it to the fans as getting Ochai Agbaji, and I'll be yes, that was a good idea, and so I just think that's going to happen, and you do want to get that one, you just do. It matters, it really matters, because if you end up at 6th like the Thunder did when they won more games than they did, and it kind of worked out for them because who's their Australian guard they got that's actually looking pretty awesome?
Josh Giddey you're talking about?
Yeah, they ended up with Giddey at 6, which they kind of lucked out, or 5 or 6, whatever it was. But they dropped way more than they wanted
6.
to.
Yeah.
And, we can't do that. If you can get top 3, you go for top 3. Like, come on. Let's do this right. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. But they're going to be doing it as well. The Spurs have already kind of cleared the deck already. That's the funny thing is I could see the Spurs being a little bit interesting. Like, because Josh Primo's pretty decent. And Devin Vassell, pretty decent. They've got that... I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Keldon Johnson, sneaky, most improved player.
Pretty decent. Yeah. Like, they're going to have nights where they played like they played against us the other night and shoot it really well. And I don't see it in Pop to try to lose the game. I don't know. Maybe. Pop, I don't know if Pop won that overall record already or not, but, Yeah,
I believe he did.
Did he? Okay, so he has nothing to... He doesn't have anything to go for now.
Supposedly he's reinvigorated by coaching youngsters?
Yeah, maybe.
Pretty interesting, yeah.
Maybe he wants a chance to coach Victor for 1 year and just see what that's like. But, man, I just... You've got to get that one. You've got to try. You have to try.
So let's wrap up with just some single player answers of who we think will fit in these kind of categories. Who do you think is going to be kind of the MVP, best player of the team? As we look back.
MVP of the team, I guess it just depends on what you think of as the MVP. Because if it's like the player that helps you win more games, it's probably Lauri Markkanen. He's kind of looked like probably our best player. I think. If you're like actually trying to win, I think Mike Conley is the MVP because he makes everyone better. I would say probably MVP of the team is probably Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, that's where I go to.
Yeah, and he's showing he's a pretty solid player. I don't know if he's a good defender, although even there he's kind of been a little interesting as a defender. Not too bad. Health is the thing with him. Can he stay healthy? And I don't know if he can. So that's actually one thing to watch this year.
Interestingly, the Jazz have 3 rookies, Walker Kessler, Simone Fontecchio, and Ochai Agbaji. Who do you think is the Rookie of the Year for the Jazz?
I think it comes down to minutes, and so I think it's Kessler. Unless Agbaji or Fontecchio get like a ton of minutes, but they just haven't been. I think it's Walker Kessler. And I actually think Walker Kessler might eventually work his way into the starting lineup. He might end up being just that good. And I think one thing I've noticed with Will Hardy I like is he does seem to allow players to earn their way.
Yeah.
And they've kind of, and I don't know, I always listen to like what the Jazz media says, and I'm always rolling my eyes a little bit, but the one thing they are mentioning is, everything's a competition. And I think one thing that was so bad with the Jazz the last 2-3 years was it just felt like nothing could be earned. Doesn't matter how good you played. It didn't matter how poor you played. Things weren't going to change. And I think one thing I'd like to see from Will Hardy is allow someone like Walker Kessler to earn his way in the starting lineup. If he's good enough, let him do it. Because I could see him being a better player than Olynyk. I mean, Olynyk's a solid veteran player, but I don't think he's unassailable in the starting lineup. So that'll be kind of fun to see if one, Kessler can develop, and 2, if Will Hardy allows him to start. So,
all right, dose of realism. Who inevitably disappoints for the Jazz?
Just the Jazz themselves. They're going to lose a lot of games.
But that is a dose of realism. But that's the ultimately optimistic way to look at it. Yeah.
I guess players. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm feeling feelings of fear that maybe Agbaji isn't very good. Maybe that's why he hasn't been playing. I don't know. So I'm saying I hope it's not Agbaji. I actually, who I think? I think it's, for me, and maybe this is kind of crazy, is Jared Vanderbilt. I kind of think like he's been kind of propped up to be this incredible defensive player, and I'm kind of like, well, let's see. And I haven't, that's one player I'm just going to watch a lot. And are you as good defensively as they say you are? Are you as versatile? And so I think that's interesting. Or does he on a team with the Jazz where he's not very good and he actually has to like have more of a role? Does he kind of look more like a second-round pick, than a player that was playing with like multiple really good offensive players in Minnesota? So
yeah, for me this is
one.
Yeah, for me this is the softball of all softballs. This one's super easy for me. I think it's Udoka Azubuike. We kept him. Yeah. We kept him, and I don't anticipate anything. And so that alone, I think, he's just, who knows when he plays, for how long will he play, and when he plays, will it literally be a flash? Now you see it, now you don't type thing. And I don't see the opportunity there. And so, for me, maybe it's, I'm clearly all out on Doak. Okay, I get it.
You're not a Doak fan, it looks like. Well, but, and I just want to say I'm rooting for Vanderbilt. It's kind of a crossroads for Vanderbilt because this is really his shot to show he could be like. There's like two paths here where he could be like really incredible or NBA role player.
I think this is his fourth team, if I do recall correctly, and so
I can't remember. I'm not totally sure, but it's just a chance for him to really like show. Let's see, who did he get drafted by?
He was on Denver, then he got traded to Minnesota and Utah, but I feel like he was drafted by Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, you're right. So he was on Denver and Minnesota. You're right. So he got traded from Denver to Minnesota. 2 seasons with Denver, 3 seasons with So he's actually been he's been in the league longer than you think. So well, yeah.
His story's incredible. His story's incredible. I love that he's crafted a place for himself, and it'll be interesting to see without playing with MVP or I guess pre-MVP Nikola Jokic, and without playing next to the greatest shooting center we've ever seen in Karl Anthony Towns. What does he kind of look like? So. Do the Jazz have any All-Stars representing an All-Star weekend? We talked about we talked about some reasons to tune in, and in the Rising Stars game, and some other events. But I don't anticipate any All-Stars. Closest might be Lauri Markkanen, but on as bad a team as the Jazz will have, he's basically going to need to be Eurobasket Lauri Markkanen in the NBA.
It's hard to make the All-Star team. Oh, whoops. Yeah. Sorry. That was ESPN. Sorry, it's just for Lauri Markkanen to make the All-Star team, he has to beat out LeBron James. He has to beat out Luka Doncic. He has to beat out Kawhi Leonard. He has to beat out Paul George. It's like...
Oh my gosh, yeah. So many guys coming back from injury that weren't a part of the running last year who are going to make it so difficult.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, maybe he averages 30. I just don't see it. But, someone has to score, and so maybe it's him, but I just don't see it. I think he has a chance for maybe most improved player, because maybe I think he has a chance to do that because I could see him scoring 20 points a game for the Jazz and really being a nice prospect that maybe someone even looks at trading for. But I don't know if he has a real shot at All-Star, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a fair point because last year he was at just under 31 minutes a game. Played 61 games, and so that bumps up to 36, 37 minutes a game maybe. And he's going to have be much more featured in the offense. His usage rate wasn't very high with Cleveland last year, so maybe just extra volume does kind of propel him maybe into a sneaky most improved player candidate. Mm-hmm. Well, that's our season preview. Hopefully you've learned a ton and are primed and stoked and ready for the season. If anything, at the very least, we learned 2 things. James Hansen will be watching extensive film on Amen Thompson and on last year's Houston Rockets, who had the worst record but somehow landed with the 3rd pick, and he's going to try to recreate that scenario for the Jazz.
If that's our fate, I'm okay with it. I'll accept that. Third overall is not bad. I mean, it's not number one.
So we can count on James to dive into the film on those two to craft that scenario for us. James, thank you so
100%.
much for joining me for the podcast. Tell us where we can find your work. I mentioned at the top of the show, but remind our listeners where we can find your work. Brag on all your awesome projects. The Donovan Mitchell video and all that kind of stuff.
Go to SLC Dunk and read that every day. The other thing is go search Hoops Nerd on YouTube and watch the videos on there. I've got a few other things. I've been trying some new things that I think are pretty fun. Animating things takes a lot of time. I don't know if anyone knew this, but it's like, it takes a while. So you have to Anyways, I got a fun thing. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe if I learn how to not sleep, I could get one of these things done that I've been working on for opening night for the Jazz.
Awesome.
But we'll see. I don't think it's going to be, but it's going to be early in the season. I have one coming out, and then I have a few other fun video ideas I have that I'm trying to kind of do. But anyways, lots of fun. But I've started doing live streaming during the games, so you can go watch the game with me on the YouTube channel, and it's kind of a fun thing to go and watch with other people. But anyways, yeah, those are all the places I'm at. I'm all over the place. And Twitter, too, I guess, if you want to see me get angry. But
so follow James at Hansen James on Twitter, and look alive for those videos and special projects coming out over the next little bit. So happy you joined us today. Thanks so much, James. And we'll just leave y'all with some sounds of jazz.